This is Dr. Jerry Lloyd, and I'm going to talk a little bit about prophecy, and probably in the next 2 or 3 lessons that we have together. And so right today, I want to just basically look at the meaning and purpose of prophecy and the need for it. Why God saw the need to give us prophecy. There's a lot more to it than what we're going to go through today, even in these things, before we get into actual prophecy. But he tells us in Isaiah 48, verses 3 through 5, this is kind of the proof text when we talk about what is prophecy. He says, I have declared the former things from the beginning, and they went forth out of my mouth, and I shewed them, and I did them suddenly, and they came to pass, because I knew that thou art obstinate, and thy neck is an iron sinew, and thy brow brass. I have even from the beginning declared it to thee. Before it came to pass, I shewed it thee, lest thou shouldest say, mine idol hath done them, and my graven image and my molten image hath commanded them. We see here the reasons for prophecy and what prophecy is. First verse that we see is verse 3. He says, I have declared the former things from the beginning, and they went forth out of my mouth, and I shewed them and did them suddenly, and they came to pass. This is the definition of prophecy. Prophecy is basically history told in advance. And so he's telling us here that I gave you prophecy. I told you this before it came to pass, and I did them so that we could know that he did them. He said, for I have declared the former things from the beginning. In Ecclesiastes, he talks about kind of from the beginning thing here. He says, in Ecclesiastes, verse 9, chapter 1, verse 9, he says, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. And verse 10 says, is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. Now, that kind of tells us that there's nothing new under the sun. In fact, he says that in Ecclesiastes many times. But the idea here in prophecy is that actually there's no new prophecy. The book of Revelation we think of being the final revelation, and we're going to, if the Lord allows, we're going to study some of it in Revelation. The book of Revelation. But actually, as you study the book of Revelation, if you've got a Bible with footnotes, you ought to look those up, because you find out that almost all of the book of Revelation is quoting or telling about Old Testament prophecies. What Revelation does is it kind of puts them in order. Daniel does that too. And if the Lord allows, we're going to do that in the future, not today. And so he tells us that prophecy is not really changed. He reveals ahead of time his plan, and then there are other purposes for prophecy, and we'll get to those maybe in the future. He goes on and says, and they came to pass, the last part of the verse, and they came to pass. What does that tell us? That tells us that really prophecy is not so we know the future. Years ago, I went to a meeting, and a person got up in the meeting, and they claimed to have the gift of prophecy. And they gave a prophetic utterance. And the thing is that it was not according to Scripture. It was about some current event or something like that, which there were a lot of prophecies back in the mid 1800s that in other books other than the Bible that talked about the Civil War, and they warned about the Civil War and the coming war between the states, the North and the South things. And you would say, well, those were prophecies and they came to pass. Yeah, they were obvious because they were coming. They were already having this dispute between states' rights and the federalism and all everything decades before the Civil War. It didn't just happen overnight. It was almost at the writing of the Constitution. They were guarding against some of those things. So prophecy is so that you can look back after it has been revealed or after it has been fulfilled and then know that God has spoken. It's not so much that we can know the future. Now, there are definitely things in the future that we can know because of prophecy. We'll talk about those later also. He goes on in verse 4. Now, here's the reason for it. There was a need. He says, well, I'm still in Ecclesiastes over there. Let's look back at Isaiah. We're in Isaiah 48, verse 4 now. Because I knew that thou art obstinate, and thy neck is an iron sinew, and thy brow brass. Now, what is he telling us there? He's telling us you're stubborn, you're stiff-necked, and hard-headed, and consequently, I'm going to do this before it came to pass. Then he gives us the reason for prophecy in verse 5. I have even from the beginning declared it to thee before it came to pass. I shewed it thee, lest thou shouldest say, in other words, you're not going to give me credit for this. You're going to give credit to mine idol hath done them, or my graven image hath or a molten image hath commanded them, or in our case in this age, I did it. We did it. Somebody else, my God, did it, or whatever. But we don't give credit to the one true God. Why? Because we don't look at his prophecies. We don't really look back. There are a number of kind of prophecies. There's prophecies that are unfulfilled, that are yet to be fulfilled, but the majority of them have been fulfilled. There's prophecies about Israel. There's prophecies about the Gentile nations, and there are warnings for us, but prophecy is so that we can look back, see the fulfillment, and know that God has spoken. So the prophecy reveals future things. God gave it to us to see the fulfillment, not so much the future, but the fulfillment when it comes to pass. There are fulfilled prophecy and unfulfilled prophecy. There are prophecies of the Jews, Gentiles, and then there's very important, what we call messianic prophecies. And in these prophecies, there are warnings, there are judgments, and then there is hope of the future revelation. Thank you very much. This is Jerry Lloyd, and if you would like to see more of these videos, go to youtube.journeybible.com. Thank you very much.